The following episode features a historic article from the Nebraska History magazine. This article may reflect the language and attitudes of its time, and while it offers valuable insight into the past, may contain expressions or viewpoints that are outdated or offensive by today's standards. Any outdated terms do not reflect the current views or perspectives of the Nebraska State Historical Society. Welcome to the Nebraska History Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Goforth. Each episode, we explore articles written and published in Nebraska History magazine. Through the pages of the Omaha Star, Mildred Brown didn't just report the news. She ignited a movement of boycotts and collective activism that predated the national stage. In this episode, we explore her crusade through the 2010 Nebraska History magazine article, Mildred Brown and the DePorres Club, Collective Activism in Omaha, Nebraska near North Side, 1947 to 1960, written by Amy Helena Force. A stylishly dressed middle-aged black woman named Mildred Brown urged the Omaha City Council to, quote, do all in their power to see that Negroes were hired as bus drivers and therefore end the lily-white hiring practices of the Omaha and Council Bluffs Streetcar Company, end quote. Speaking slowly, enunciating each word, and standing at her tallest, 5 feet 5 inches, the publisher of the Omaha Star newspaper and representative of the DePorres Club directed her comments to the council chairman. Quote, I say to you, Your Honor, the mayor, if the tram company will not hire Negroes as drivers, we prevail on you to remove the franchise of the bus company, end quote. Straightening the corsage fastened to her fuchsia-colored suit jacket, she abruptly turned on her matching colored high heels. Approaching her chair, Brown looked over her shoulder at the row of white men in ties and said, quote, if our boys can drive jeeps, tanks, and jet planes in Korea in the fight to save democracy, make democracy work at home, end quote. Born in Alabama in 1905, Mildred Brown was the owner, publisher, and editor of the Omaha Star, which she co-founded in 1938. An iconoclastic leader, Brown nurtured, encouraged, and spoke for her black readership until her death in 1989. But the years of her most intense civil rights activity coincide with the existence of the DePorres Club, a pioneering civil rights organization in Omaha that was active between 1947 and 1960. Brown was, quote, one of those individuals who became involved in the civil rights struggle long before it was fashionable, end quote. As one of the nation's few black newspaper women and the only black woman to publish a newspaper in Nebraska, Brown occupied a unique historic position. During the 1940s and 1950s, she and other DePorres Club members successfully created equal employment opportunities through boycotts and through the auspice of the Star. Brown's Weekly not only provided a voice for near North Side residents, but also provided the necessary communication for collective neighborhood activism. For her, it was more than a moral challenge. She felt it was her civic responsibility as a middle-class businesswoman living in a black community. In February 1947, the Omaha Star printed a request for a community meeting. Brown wanted near North Side residents to meet her downtown at the Young Women's Christian Association, the YWCA building. She chose the location not only because she was a member of the YWCA, but also because of the organization's interracial goals of anti-lynching laws, race relations, and female empowerment. Brown wished to, quote, acquaint the people of the community with the facts of the lack of employment in the business places of this community, end quote. She wanted, quote, freedom from fear, want, and the right to equal opportunity, end quote. At the meeting, an interracial group of approximately 35 people listened to Brown expound on the unfairness of white business owners accepting the black community as customers but refusing them as employees. Brown's staffers researched 534 available occupations listed in the 1940 census. They discovered that Omaha's, quote, Negroes have no employment in as many as 96 occupations, end quote. Skilled black men and women applied for these positions, but their applications were rejected. Approximately 1,000 black near North Side citizens seeking work remained unemployed, while the few who found employment were, quote, working for a livelihood at jobs far below their status, both in rank and pay, end quote. Brown told her audience they, quote, must approach industry, commerce, and big business with our problem and seek the opportunity to work and grow, end quote. She demanded that those present act quickly, stating, quote, let us resolve to be a people and subsequently act in a way to show we appreciate employment of members of our group by patronizing all businesses where there can be found Negroes working, end quote. The interracial assembly agreed to convene again and elected Brown as their chairperson. Brown's newspaper campaign for equal opportunity employment gained momentum from the DePorres Club. The Reverend John Marcoux, S.J., and 6 white Creighton University students founded the activist organization on November 3, 1947. Additional branches appeared in Kansas City, Missouri, and Denver, Colorado by the mid-1950s. The non-university sanctioned club demonstrated a nationwide trend between the Catholic Church and impoverished black communities. Patrick Jones's book, The Selma of the North, examines Father Groppe and his Milwaukee, Wisconsin congregation joining black urban residents in a church-approved fight against racism and discrimination, while John McCreevy's Parish Boundaries, the Catholic Encounter with Race in the 20th Century Urban North, includes an exploration of Father Marcoux and his brother William's commitment, quote, to give and dedicate our whole lives and all our energies as far as we are able to work on the salvation of the Negroes in the United States, end quote. The DePorres Club's first meeting in Omaha attracted an interracial crowd of 47 people. Marcoux, an eccentric, tall, silver-haired former West Point graduate recently banished from St. Louis University's Jesuit community for his civil rights advocacy, delivered the opening prayer. Afterwards, he explained to those gathered that the organization borrowed its name from a black Dominican friar, Martin DePorres, the 17th century biracial monk best known for his slave ship ministry. The Catholic Church canonized him in 1962. Marcoux informed his audience that although the club's goals were, quote, better racial relations through constructive actions to banish every form of compulsory segregation and abolish any and all forms of discrimination against individuals because of race, color, or creed, end quote, its real purpose was to, quote, kick Jim Crow's ass out of Omaha, end quote. At the end of the initial meeting, members elected 21-year-old Denny Holland as club president and Omaha Star reporter Harold Tibbs as vice president. The DePorres Club taught its members to challenge discriminatory behaviors in the city of Omaha. Bertha Calloway and her husband James joined the club, quote, because Omaha was a racist town. You couldn't eat downtown, end quote. She recalled the Jesuit priest encouraging members to fight against racial superiority. Quote, Father Marcoux tried to keep quiet, but he talked about white people like you wouldn't believe. Then, after he'd do his little talk, we would get together and have little meetings, end quote. DePorres member Dorothy Ure remembered these original breakout sessions. Quote, not only did we discuss the evils of racism, but we developed plans and strategy, maneuvering our small force to correcting the vicious acts, end quote. The city of Omaha, similar to other urban Midwestern cities, enforced Southern de jure laws as accepted de facto segregation. A 1943 editorial in a mainstream Iowa newspaper, the Des Moines Tribune, indicated a common feeling among several pro-segregation citizens living in one of Brown's former cities of residence. Quote, conditions are getting to be rather rotten in Des Moines, where Negroes are given the right by our damnable state law to enter the first-class restaurants and be served food in the booths with white customers, end quote. The DePorres Club first joined forces with Brown when Marvin Kellogg Sr., her adopted son-in-law, filed a discrimination suit against downtown Greyhound bus station's Harkett Cafe. The eatery refused service to Kellogg and his interracial party of 6, one of whom was Brown. The club hosted a Marvin Kellogg rally to pay his legal fees while the Star publicized the event. The response from near North Side residents was overwhelming. Possibly intimidated, the Harkard Cafe owner failed to appear on his court date. Specifics of Kellogg's discrimination case might offer a better assessment of the city's latent racism, but records of Kellogg's suit and all other Northern Omaha grievances filed at Omaha's police court remain unavailable to the public. The author was first denied access to these records by the Omaha Police Department, and upon further inquiry was told that these records no longer existed. Research at Omaha's Roman L. Hruska United States Courthouse revealed no documentation of federal discrimination suits filed by either Mildred D. Brown or Marvin Kellogg Sr. Because of possible backlash against the university, Creighton administrators insisted that the DePorres Club convene elsewhere. According to Dennis Mihalich's The History of Creighton University, 1878 to 2003, the club, quote, moved its meetings off campus due to controversy, end quote. As the organization's sponsor, Marcoux was aware of a, quote, few college professors and citizens finding fault with the program, end quote. Outsiders viewed the club as radical, a group of crackpots, disturbers of the peace. Because it was interracial in character, it was accused of fostering interracial dating designed to culminate in interracial marriage. Several Creighton priests ostracized Marcoux after he organized the club. It began in the dining hall. Marcoux, a veteran of the Spanish-American War, somehow always ended up eating alone. He heard the not-so-quiet mumblings, his colleagues giving him labels. Inundated by the lack of support from his fellow professors and the university, Marcoux temporarily moved the club to a storefront office on 24th Street, but the rent money proved difficult to sustain. Brown invited the DePorres Club into the Star's office building, which was also her home. She told Marcoux, quote, "You don't need money to operate out of my place," end quote. The DePorres Club planned to meet at the Star on Friday nights. Brown announced the organization's new arrangement in the newspaper's October 27, 1950 edition by printing, quote, "Through the courtesy of Miss Mildred Brown, the DePorres Club will be meeting at the newspaper office for the foreseeable future," end quote. Father Marcoux and Mildred Brown thus became the parents of the DePorres Club. The Reverend Kenneth Vavrina of St. Benedict the Moor saw Marcoux as, quote, "the father of the civil rights movement in Omaha." Marcoux led demonstrations on 24th Street when no one knew what was going on, end quote. Vavrina, the leader of Northern Omaha's largest Black Catholic congregation, understood Marcoux's dual role in the Northern community and the DePorres Club. Serving as a priest, Marcoux had neither wife nor child, but he mentored club president Denny Holland. Because the activist liberal arts student lost his father at a young age, he regularly asked Marcoux for fatherly advice, especially when Holland received hate mail threatening to kill him because of his involvement in the club. Brown was a mother figure in the DePorres family equation. The Star's owner became the organization's staunchest ally. When club members invited activist organizations such as the Friendship Houses of America to Omaha, Brown provided rooms for their meetings at their Carnation Ballroom. Interacting with the DePorres organization became a shining part of the publisher's life. Brown hired Holland as a Star reporter, photographer, advertising salesman, and driver. Employing the club president as her chauffeur allowed Brown to teach him salesmanship while acting as a surrogate mother. When Holland married DePorres Club reporter Gene Waite, the Omaha Star not only ran a long article on the nuptials, but also accompanied it with a large wedding photograph of the happy couple. Father Marcoux, who had a history of using the press to make change happen, quote, used the Omaha Star to his advantage, end quote. The paper printed summaries of weekly club minutes, featured articles charting the organization's actions, and published members' editorials critical of racism. Brown supported club activities by printing letters sent to business owners refusing service to Black Omahans. In return, the club provided exclusive pictures and sensational news stories every time it picketed a discriminating business. Brown was well aware that, quote, editorializing for social causes was not always acceptable to white business enterprises that might be chief advertisers, end quote. Challenging mainstream Omaha proved costly for her business. Denny Holland's son, Matt, remembered Brown, quote, had the constant worry about money and was nervous about the Omaha Star going out of business, end quote. Gene Waite Holland recalled Brown, quote, running out of the Star to stop workers as they were about to shut off the electricity, end quote. Brown persevered despite her financial difficulties. The DePorres Club jump-started Northern Omaha's equality campaign when it discovered an old but valuable Nebraska legal precedent. The 1893 Nebraska Civil Rights Statute supplied necessary legal leverage against discrimination. It states, quote, all persons within this state shall be entitled to a full and equal enjoyment of the accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges of inns, restaurants, public amusements, conveyances, barbershops, theaters, and other places of amusement, subject only to the conditions and limitations established by law and applicable alike to every person. If the equal privileges were denied, a penalty ensued. Any person who shall violate the foregoing section by denying to any person except for reason by law applicable to all persons the full enjoyment of any of the accommodations, advantages, facilities, or privileges enumerated in the foregoing section, or by aiding or inciting such denials, shall for each offense be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor and be fined in any sum not less than $25 nor more than $100, and to pay the costs of prosecution, end quote. Although the statute explained how Nebraska's civil rights applied to all residents of the state, the current issue depended on convincing the city of Omaha to prosecute violators. Club members distributed hundreds of handbills documenting the civil rights statute. Brown supported the organization's activism. Quote, I believe in economic measures like boycotts to achieve goals. A businessman who won't hire you but wants to rip you off should not be patronized, end quote. She encouraged DePorres members to file discrimination suits against local venues such as Harry's Tea Club, Pignotti's Donut Shop, the Paxton Hotel, Epley Airfield, and the Greyhound Bus Station. Sometimes the DePorres organization had, quote, 8 to 10 different suits going on, end quote. Bertha Calloway recalled visiting Pignotti's Donut Shop with a white girlfriend named Peggy. The waitress refused to serve them. The two women asked the owner, Mr. Pignotti, to come to their table. The following conversation ensued. Peggy said, quote, don't you know me, Mr. Pignotti? We go to the same church. Mr. Pignotti replied, yes, I know who you are, but I am not serving them. You're going to have to leave. Peggy replied, in the name of Christ, how can you do this? His reply, hey, I serve them and I'll lose business. I'm not going to start to serve colored people here, end quote. Calloway let them know that she had the right to file charges. But Pignotti replied, quote, I don't give a damn whether you file charges against me or not. I'm not serving you, end quote. Calloway filed those charges at the Omaha's police court. The following day, an officer served Pignotti with a warrant during his lunch break. At the court proceedings, Pignotti pointed to Calloway and said, quote, that's the one that had me arrested like I was a common criminal. All I did was say that I was not going to serve colors in my place, end quote. Judge Palmer replied, quote, well, I don't blame you, but you're going to have to pay the $25 fine, end quote. The judge turned to Calloway and told him, now that DePorres Club, what are you guys up to? Are you all communists or something? Club members assured Northern Omaha and the city of Omaha that it was a patriotic American organization. Members refused to react to the practice of red baiting, accusing someone of being a communist. Their strategy was common for those harassed during the Cold War years. The fear of interracial organizations dabbling in communism was not so far-fetched. During the 1930s, the prevalence of blacks in the Communist Party earned it a special epithet throughout the South, especially in Brown's home state of Alabama. The DePorres Club weighed the benefits of becoming members of the American Communist Party, but Father Marcoux dissuaded members by stating, quote, I'd do business with the devil himself to stop racism, end quote. But communism would not change Omaha's discriminatory practices. Besides, he disclosed, the club was already under investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Federal agents kept surveillance logbooks and questioned club president Holland. He informed the FBI there were several members whom he called confused individuals, such as Vice President and Star reporter Harold Tibbs, who did not know if they were communist or not, but just because the interracial organization supported civil rights did not mean its members were more apt to join the ACP. Thomas Borstelmann's The Cold War and the Color Line explores how several self-righteous Americans, such as Georgia's Governor Herman Talmadge, claimed communism as a rationale for supporting segregation of the races, saying, quote, "If communists supported racial integration, could there be any clearer sign of its immorality?" End quote. In March 1950, the DePorres Club explained its moral stance by staging the play Trial by Fire. Members of the cast placed an article in the Star summarizing the production's script. Written by Father George Dunn, a friend of Father Marcoux, the play focused on the true story of a black family moving into an all-white neighborhood in California. A mob burned down their home, and several family members died. The dramatic presentation proved timely because an incident, albeit less severe, had recently occurred in Omaha. Woodrow Morgan, a World War II black fighter pilot and prisoner of war, bought a home in one of the city's covenanted white neighborhoods. According to Jack Angus's text, Black and Catholic in Omaha, a case of double jeopardy, prior to the Morgan family moving into their new home, quote, "someone broke some of the windows," end quote. Marcoux and the club arrived the morning of the Morgans' intended relocation and seated themselves on the front porch. Looking imposing in his clerical collar, the priest told inquiring neighbors, quote, "We're here to welcome the new family," end quote. The Morgan family moved into their home without any trouble. A review of the play appeared not only in the Star, but also in the establishment newspaper, the Omaha World Herald. Holland clarified the two-review situation by explaining that the mainstream newspaper viewed a theatrical production as an innocuous activity. If the media, quote, publicized desegregation actions, it might lead to riots. Therefore, they would never give us publicity on our more militant kinds of activities, end quote. The Star printed details of discriminatory employment practices in northern Omaha community. In tandem with club minutes, newspaper articles focused on sensitive positions, entry jobs that were visible to the public, such as counter clerks and drivers. The near North Side's Edholm Sherman Laundry refused to hire black employees. Brown published Mrs. Edholm's conversation with a club member. The laundry owner disclosed that even though 70% of her clientele were black, her policy was not to hire black men and women. Quote, "The white people might object to a Negro waiting on them," end quote. Although the club member was flabbergasted with the proprietor's logic, Brown validated the laundry owner's right to hire whomever she chose, but noted that if Mrs. Edholm did not change her beliefs soon, it would be a great loss to the community. After another week of Mrs. Edholm continuing her unfair hiring policy, the Star supported the club's, quote, "do not patronize" campaign, since it had no alternative but to ask the Negroes of the city for a boycott against this business, end quote. By October, the club's campaign resulted in a surprising result. The owners of the Edholm Sherman Laundry put it up for sale. Excited by their success, Brown and the DePorres Club attempted collective activism against Omaha's Central High School. The Secondary Institute was the alma mater of the publisher's foster daughter, Ruth Harris Kellogg. As a club member, Brown paid for the printing of 4,000 handbills which described why the activist organization needed to protest the high school's production. Quote, "This is discrimination. Negroes at Central are not allowed full and equal participation in some activities at this school. How is it that the opera tonight, put on by the student body, has no Negro students in the cast? The last road show here humiliated the Negro students by presenting a degrading blackface in the show. Isn't it about time for public school officials to catch up with public opinion on this matter? With democracy on trial all over the world, it is not time to eliminate on the local scene that which is against the spirit of democracy and thus weakens her at home and abroad," end quote. Before police officers halted the leaflet protest, members managed to hand out approximately 300 missives to opera attendees. The police warned the club protesters that they were not allowed to distribute the flyers on school property. President Holland keenly remembered what happened next. A man strode up to him and accused him of being a communist. Holland then replied, "May God have mercy on your soul." The club's administrator had, quote, "never seen anybody so full of hate. Now that was the closest that I have ever come to violence," end quote. Refusing to be intimidated by false accusations, the club and the Stars next targeted the Coca-Cola bottling company. Brown met with General Manager Mac L. Gothard on May 7, 1951, and informed Gothard that the club was launching a "Don't Buy Coke" campaign. Brown said that she, quote, "agreed with their activities completely," end quote. In fact, she told Gothard, quote, "every thinking person in Omaha should support the DePorres Club," end quote. But not everyone in northern Omaha agreed with her assessment. Peter C. Doss, advertising manager of the Black Omaha Guide newspaper, the Omaha Star's competition, met with Gothard and informed the bottling company's manager that, quote, "most blacks in North Omaha do not support the boycott," end quote. Shortly after this conversation, C.C. Galloway, the Guide's publisher and Brown's former boss, met with the DePorres Club members. Galloway stressed the importance of the black press and how it molded public opinion. Brown ignored Galloway's veiled judgment of her paper. However, after Doss paid photographer Irwin Miller to take pictures of Coca-Cola's 2 token black hires, Brown accused Doss of being an Uncle Tom. A concerned Miller gave his photographs to Holland, who later handed the images to Brown, whose instincts proved correct. According to FBI records, Doss visited their Omaha office seeking incriminating evidence against the DePorres Club. Doss informed FBI agent John Barnes that the club caused, quote, "disconnect and disunity among the Negroes and hate between the white and Negroes," end quote. Brown and her staff stayed up most of the night printing an extra edition of the Star. The June 8, 1951 special issue displayed an image of a smiling Gothard shaking hands with his 2 new permanent black assembly line employees. The Star quoted the Coca-Cola manager insisting that, quote, "the DePorres Club didn't have anything to do with our hiring Negroes," end quote. 14 years later, in 1965, Gothard publicly amended his previous comment, quote, "if there is anything I can say about the DePorres Club, it is that they were ahead of their time. The methods and pressures they used were not thought of in those days, and I was shocked by their tactics. I was ignorant of the whole thing," end quote. Energized by their employment victory, the club and the Star next contacted the Omaha and Council Bluffs Street Railway Company, whose buses and electric streetcars crisscrossed Omaha, northern Omaha, and Council Bluffs, Iowa. In the early 1940s, the Omaha Urban League challenged the local corporation's steadfast refusal to hire black bus drivers. Like the DePorres Club, the Urban League was accused of ties with the American Communist Party. The Urban League questioned the company's personnel manager, Chester Colvin, about the unfair hiring practices, but to no avail. Reform did not occur until the DePorres Club and Brown challenged the policy in 1952. The streetcar management used stereotypical rhetoric, quote, "no white woman would be safe in a streetcar if there was a black man driving," end quote. The club printed and distributed pamphlets, and the Star provided irate readers with the home addresses and phone numbers of the company's officials. Shortly thereafter, the O&CB bought its last full-page ad in the Star. Brown wrote, quote, "it is this paper's duty to take a stand on vital issues. We are convinced that 2 great evils facing us are racial discrimination and racial segregation. This paper will expose and oppose those evils. We accept this not only as a right, but as a duty. The price of the duty which we accept comes high. It would be financially more profitable for us to remain silent. In the past few months, we have opposed racial discrimination as practiced by several business places. Others have found it to their liking to remain silent or to completely sell out. We have and still are losing money for taking the stand of exposing and opposing these evils," end quote. Brown also printed a blanket statement addressed to Omaha's city commissioners, warning that the Star would run a tireless campaign for civic and economic improvements for the near North Side. She encouraged Star readers to send editorials to the Omaha World Herald's Public Pulse column. She raised the hopes of near North Side readers by printing stories of successful bus campaigns, such as a protest in St. Louis, Missouri. Quote, "The St. Louis Company now is accepting applicants for bus and streetcar operators regardless of race, creed, or color. It is Omaha's turn now." End quote. She made sure that articles concerning the DePorres Club's bus protest ran in the Kansas City Call and the St. Louis Argus, both black weekly newspapers. Brown devised this progressive strategy nearly 4 years before the famous Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott of 1955 and 56. As a DePorres Club Street Railway Committee member, Brown instructed her readers, quote, "Don't ride Omaha's buses or streetcars. If you must ride, protest by using 18 pennies, end quote. The DePorres Club leaflets repeated her words. The club's FBI file still contains a copy of the flyer. The club advised local merchants to stockpile pennies to aid the protesters. As the boycott, or what ministerial activists in Philadelphia later dubbed selective patronage, stretched into its second year, Brown asked her subscribers to donate money to the cause. Quote, "It is obvious that we are gauged for a long campaign, a campaign of which that be won only through much hard work, planning, and finance of which must come from the near North Side citizenry." End quote. In a grassroots tactic used later in Montgomery, DePorres Club participants organized carpools to keep black Omahans off the buses. Realizing the importance of communication during the boycott, Brown kept readers updated by printing the club's daily activities. On March 3, 1952, the DePorres Club voted to affiliate with the Congress on Racial Equality, better known as CORE. Club members elected Brown as their CORE spokesperson. Glenn Askew's But for Birmingham, the local and national movement in the civil rights struggle, discussed how CORE made a difference, especially with college students. Its Journey to Reconciliation campaign nonviolently challenged segregation, while its Freedom Rides ended in publicized violence. Brown's first assignment as a CORE representative consisted of presenting the club's arguments to the Omaha City Council. Brown asked the council to encourage the O and CB to hire black bus drivers, especially since black men served as drivers during the current Korean War. She noted that President Truman had ordered the desegregation of the military in 1948, but this failed to impress Omaha's administrators. The council recommended the Star's publisher investigate the O and CB situation by speaking with the newly formed Mayor's Human Relations Committee. The chair of the city committee, who was none other than DePorres Club sponsor Father Marcoux, commended Brown, quote, "for the fearless presentation of facts dealing with racial discrimination," quote, but he was unable to increase pressure on the streetcar company to hire black drivers. By November 1952, the DePorres Club picketers were marching in front of the railway company headquarters, carrying signs reading, quote, "Negro GIs drive tanks, jeeps, and trucks. Why not buses and streetcars in Omaha?" End quote. The protests and boycotting against the transportation company continued for another 2 years. Finally, the city council threatened to attach an anti-discrimination amendment onto the streetcar's franchise agreement. The company soon hired 3 African-American men as drivers. Omaha administrators trusted the O and CB's new hiring policy. Mayor Johnny Rosenblatt said, quote, "They have had a change of mind. I think we have got the thing licked," end quote. Public Property Commissioner Warren Swigert agreed to leave out the policy amendment since now, quote, "the clause would be discriminatory against the streetcar firm," end quote. O and CB President James P. Lee insisted their final decision to hire the 3 black employees was, quote, "merely coincidence," end quote. Lee denied that the O and CB had refused to hire applicants because of their race. Apparently, previous applicants were either unqualified or failed to pass the required tests. Enraged, Brown asked her readers, quote, "How gullible and naive do they think people are? For lo, these many years they have with utter disregard refused to hire Negro applicants. Suddenly they hire 3 and you want to believe that they have never refused bus and train operator employment to anyone solely because of the applicant's race or color?" End quote. A Star reporter interviewed Lee. When asked if he would let them go after the risk of losing his franchise passed, he patronizingly responded, quote, "These drivers can stay with the company as long as they want it if they do their job right and behave themselves," end quote. The O&CB even attempted to hire DePorres Club member and International Sweethearts of Rhythm trombonist Helen Jones Woods as a driver. Not knowing how to drive, she turned down the offer. The first of the O&CB public hearings convened on August 17, 1954. The Star publisher attended the meetings along with 200 other Omahans. Brown happily noted that the northern Omaha community sent representatives, quote, "from every club, group, church, and special interest," end quote, to the meeting. At the second hearing, held on August 24th, the City Council made a motion to add an anti-discrimination clause to the company's amended franchise, quote, "In the employment relations of the company, there shall be no discrimination in the employment because of race, creed, or color," end quote. O&CB administrators realized the ramifications of the clause. On the front page of the Star's October 22, 1954 edition, the newspaper displayed a large photograph of an additional 4 black men hired as drivers by the O&CB. Brown and the DePorres Club's hard-fought campaign was a success. One of the last protests, spearheaded by the club and the Star, concerned the discriminatory employment practices of Reed's Ice Cream Company. Initially, Belle Griffin, a representative of the DePorres Club, spoke with Reed's personnel manager, Mr. Becker, who assured Belle that he would think about hiring black employees. 2 years of noncompliance later, Holland wrote a letter to Reed's management. The Omaha Star printed his missive, quote, "This unfair policy of denying equal job opportunities to Negroes, especially because of your large number of Negro customers, has for too long stood in complete violation of the American ideal of equal opportunity. It is becoming ever more urgent that we live up to this ideal as Americans in Korea, regardless of color, fight and die to preserve democracy. Beginning Monday, January 19th, until we hear from you before then, we will stop supporting your unfair policy by not buying Reed's ice cream. We shall take all of our friends who believe in equal opportunity, regardless of color, to do the same until you open employment at all levels to qualified Negroes. We remain anxious to discuss a change of policy with you." End quote. The club and the Star insisted that near Northside residents boycott the ice cream shop at 24th and Wirt Street. Protesters distributed handbills in front of the store. After one potential white customer read the DePorres flyer, he stated, quote, "My boy's life was saved by a Negro in Korea. As a small token of thanks to him, I'll tell my friends not to buy Reed's ice cream," end quote. The store's manager responded through the Star, quote, "We don't care if they buy our ice cream or not," end quote. Near Northside resident Richard Artisan remembered watching the Reed's demonstration when he was a young child. He witnessed Brown marching with the picketers. The Star owner stopped to talk with him. She explained why he should not purchase ice cream from Reed's. He did not buy his customary treat. Later on, the Star's publisher witnessed a woman asking a child to buy her an ice cream cone. When the child asked the woman, quote, "What's wrong with you, lady? Don't you know that they don't hire our people at Reed's? I wouldn't go there for no money," end quote. Max Brownell, Mildred Brown's common-law second husband and DePorres Club member, kept track of non-compliant residents. He noted the names of 4 young black men who read the club's handbill but still purchased ice cream. They knew about the racist hiring policy, but they liked the frozen dessert better. The Star not only printed Brownell's list of Uncle Toms supporting white supremacy, but also promised to print photographs of anyone seen buying ice cream. The paper threatened to include the patron's, quote, "name, license plate, and the amount of time that they were in the store," end quote. By September of 1954, the Star reported that there were very few blacks visiting Reed's and that hundreds of whites turned away as well when they learned of the store's, quote, "un-American employment policy," end quote. Occasionally, club protesters needed the protection of the law when white citizens, quote, "would go by and throw things," quote, at them. Reed loudly told the picketers to leave the premises, but police watched the entire affair from a block away and did not interfere. After 9 months of protests and picketing, Reed's capitulated and in January 1954 hired Virginia Dixon. The black saleswoman worked the 5 p.m. to midnight shift. The Deporres Club and the Star proclaimed a victory, insisting in print that they bore no grudges. Organization members joined Brown in a celebration. The Star publisher treated them to an ice cream cone at Reed's. Although Brown and the Deporres Club's Fair Employment campaign raised residents' hopes of attaining more rights, the black community showed signs of class factionalism. Brown scolded her readers in an editorial, quote, "Today, we are deeply concerned with the role of the colored man in the advancement of democracy. Specifically, we refer to those colored citizens of Omaha who, by good fortune and in some cases, and hard work in others, are looked upon as leaders. We know there are those among the leadership for who some petty and selfish reasons are leaders in name only. Traitors and do-nothings are dangerous not only to the cause of non-whites, but also the cause of the nation," end quote. Omaha's black class system was causing a schism among civil rights leadership. Former resident Joan McCall Lincoln explained Northern Omaha's hierarchy. Status depended on an individual's employment and his place of worship. For instance, Christian congregants at St. Philip's Episcopal Church and St. John's African Methodist Episcopal tended to be the professional and elite blacks. Their children went to museums and attended the opera. St. Philip's showcased their wealthy members by sponsoring the Coronation Ball. St. John's held a comparable event, the King Solomon Wedding. The two black high society events were the equivalent of Omaha's Exarban Ball, a lavish annual affair since 1895, which had a whites-only policy for many years. Although Brown belonged to St. John's AME Church, she was not originally on Black Omaha's social A-list. Despite being crowned the reigning church queen from 1952 and 1953 at the annual King Solomon Wedding, several of the black elite derogatorily named her Miss Carnation because of her oversized carnation corsages. She was not accepted in the higher echelon of Northern Omaha's society because she had slighted black elite C.C. Galloway, publisher of the Omaha Guide, when she and her first husband, Dr. S.E. Gilbert, took 5 Guide staffers with them when they founded the Star in 1938. Dorothy Glenn, co-owner of the short-lived American Record newspaper, explained that since the people of the near North Side accepted the Star as an alternate to the Guide, eventually they accepted Brown as well. But she was, quote, "not part of the creme de la creme until she was older," end quote. Several weeks after Brown's printed outburst, Holland wrote a follow-up article entitled, "Those Who Don't Make Mistakes." Addressing his remarks to readers disgruntled with the club and the Star, he said, quote, "Spending all of our time criticizing those who are in a position of leadership is like rocking a rocking chair. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't get you anywhere," end quote. He challenged readers, some of whom he knew to be biased against Brown and the club, to, quote, "throw aside all pettiness and unite to work for common cause. It is those who do nothing who make no mistakes," end quote. Part of the class issue stemmed from a misunderstanding. Several middle-class Northern Omaha citizens incorrectly assumed the Deporres Club's employment discrimination interests only helped the black Catholic community. Residents interviewed for this article still believe this to be true. Quote, "They were Catholics. That was St. Benedict's," end quote, department. However, the black church's jurisdiction in Omaha's 2nd Ward connected it to the city's 33 other houses of Catholic worship. After Omaha's Archbishop Gerald Bergen committed Omaha's parishioners to fight against racial discrimination, Northern Omaha gained significant support for its next round of protests in the 1960s. Between the late 1940s and early 1950s, Brown and the Deporres Club successfully enacted a minority employment campaign through collective activism. The Star publisher, Father Marcoux, and Denny Holland reformed the discriminatory hiring practices at Edholm Sherman Laundry, Coca-Cola Bottling Company, and O&CB Corporation, and Reed's Ice Cream Company. Decades later, Brown's close friend Paul Bryant recalled that she and the Deporres Club were simply practicing what she regularly preached to him. Quote, "Do right because it is the right thing to do. Don't do right in search of reward or in fear of retribution," end quote. In October 1954, a special meeting took place in the back of the Omaha Star office. The 8 remaining members of the Deporres Club voted to disband after 7 years of protesting. Brown's days of collective activism were over. Quote, she had to walk a narrow line, wooing white advertisers while informing black readers, and she paid the price in lost revenues and broken windows, end quote. Although the club reconvened in May 1955, Holland was no longer president and activities dwindled. Father Marcoux remained the club's sponsor throughout its 13 years of activity. It was time for another organization to take over Black Northern Omaha's fight. The Citizens Coordinating Committee for Civil Liberties, better known as the 4CL, replaced the DePorres Club in 1960. By now, Marcoux was an elderly man, and Brown only a decade and a half younger. They served as members of the new activist organization, but followed its black clergy leadership. Brown no longer picketed businesses, and the DePorres Club members no longer convened at the Star on Friday nights. But their years of boycotting together laid the foundation for Omaha's national civil rights movement. It would be the next chapter in Brown's commitment to the near North Side struggle for equality. Thank you for listening to the Nebraska History Podcast. To learn more about Nebraska History Magazine, to learn more about our podcast, or to support our podcast by becoming a member of the Nebraska State Historical Society, go to history.nebraska.gov/podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and get notified when we release new episodes on your favorite podcast platform every other week. Until next time, I'm Chris Goforth.